Right, so this is a little bit challenging for me because I've had some thoughts and things I was wanting to share, and then certain things in preparing those thoughts basically took over and just jumbled everything up into a great big mess. So it's not put together the way it needs to be. So I'm just going to be kind of talking through some things um, because they hit me pretty well today. But last night we had, what was that service called that we had last night? Kol Nidre and that was about what? The oaths and the vows and things that we have, right? I was just wanting to point out a couple things, really, because I've been also told that, I can't finish early today with my message because that would mean we just have to sit around and smell the food. So I have to be, mindful of the time to go as long as possible so we don't have to wait very long for the service to be done. But if you don't know, the book of Hebrews is really organized around a lot of these fall feasts, particularly Yom Kippur. And so in this part in chapter 6, and I don't have the verses up here, but it says, this is just talking about oaths and vows. It says, when God made his promise to Abraham, since he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely I will bless you, and surely I will multiply you. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham reached the promise. For people swear by someone greater, and the oath, as confirmation, is an end to all their disputing. In the same way, God, determining to point out more clearly to the heirs of the promise the unchanging nature of his purpose, guaranteed it with an oath. And so by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to take hold of the hope that's set before us. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, both firm and steady, a hope that enters the inner place behind the curtain. Yeshua has entered there as a forerunner on our behalf, having become the Kohen Gadol forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. And over in chapter 7, verse 20, he talks about again about the oath. He says, moreover, it was not without a sworn oath. Others indeed have become Kohanim without a sworn oath, but he with an oath sworn by the one who said to him, Adonai has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a Kohen forever. So the idea of oaths and vows are significant and play an important part in the point that the book of Hebrews is trying to make. And with that, don't lose that spot in Hebrews because we're going to be coming back to it. But over in 1 Peter chapter 1, there's a moment that is significant in all of this about what this day is like in verse 17. He just talked to them about being kedoshim, or holy you shall be, for I am kadosh. Be holy, for I am holy. And he says in verse 17, if you call on him as Father, the one who judges impartially according to each one's deeds, then live out the time of sojourning in reverent fear. That's what the last 10 days has been a lot about. We're living out our lives in that reverent fear because he is the one who judges impartially. Right? He doesn't play favorites in that sense. He doesn't look at you and say, well, you don't have enough money, so I'm not really going to consider you worthy of my time. I'm just going to dismiss you and get on to the next more important person. He doesn't play that kind of game. But we live out the time that we have sojourning in reverent fear. And I was asking the question, how is it that what's the basis upon which we stand before him? What offering do we bring when we come before the judge, before the king? In verse 18, he says, "You know that you were redeemed from the futile way of life handed down from your ancestors, not with perishable things such as silver or gold." So again, are we ever going to be able to buy our way out of this, of our circumstances or our situation? No, there's nothing that is in this world that is good enough to make a payment on the debt that we owe. Right? The judgment that is set against us, there's often a fine or something else like that that comes along with it. And the debt, the fine that is levied against us is so great, the entire wealth of the planet could not pay off the debt of one of us. That makes sense? And that's kind of important for where things go. He says, "You've not been redeemed with the perishable things such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood like that of a lamb, without defect or spot, the blood of Messiah." It says, "He was chosen before the foundation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake." So when did this plan come about? When was this decided? Before the foundation of the world. The debt was known, and the remedy and the debt being paid, how it was going to be paid, was known from the foundation of the world. It just didn't know. Nobody else necessarily knew it. We didn't all get the memo ahead of time, and we might have gotten some indications, some clues, some directions to be watching for it. But until it happened, we didn't know exactly how he was going to do it. He says, "Through him you are believers in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your trust and your hope are in God." Some people might ask that question: do you believe in Messiah Yeshua, or do you believe in God? And the answer on that last statement is what? Yes. Through him you are believers in God. Through him you are believers in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your trust and hope are in God. Even when you put your faith in Yeshua, in Messiah, you're putting your hope in the Father. Because this has all been the plan all along. He says, "Now that you have purified your souls in obedience to the truth, leading to sincere and brotherly love, love one another fervently from a pure heart. You have been born again, or born from above, not from perishable seed, but imperishable, through the living and enduring Word of God." Not from something that dies, not from something that this world has. You have been purchased, you have been born again, you have been redeemed from something that has never died, something that is imperishable, something that will never spoil, that will never decay, something essentially not of this world. And this is what is challenging to me in all of this, because I'm trying to figure out the way to progress through my thinking in all of this. So it's bear with me a little bit, okay? There's a lot of negotiations going on in the world right now. Y'all been hearing about some of those between nations and things like that, and how that works. Usually, I have a visual aid because I felt like I was probably going to butcher it otherwise. When there's nations and covenants, when they are making agreements and treaties and all those kind of things, you think about how it works. You have nation number one and nation number two How is it that if they're in conflict, or if they're needing to make some sort of agreement, some sort of treaty, some sort of covenant between them in this world, how does this work? What do they do? What's the process? Okay, very true. But where do they do that? Usually, you're on target. Usually, they go to some neutral site, right? Some third party neutral site where it's not their home, it's not either one of them don't have sovereignty there necessarily, and they get together, they argue, and they hash some of these things out, right? And so they make up this agreement and this covenant. But what happens when one of those nations break the covenant? What do? Don't they have to kind of go back to that neutral site again, right? The one that has broken it. I'm going to say the one that is which one? If the red nation is the one that's broken the covenant, of those two, then which has to make restitution? Which has to pay the penalty or whatever is spelled out in the covenant? The one that broke it is the one that has to pay it, right? It has to come from that that source or that side that broke it. And I just see if I can find that. Oh, where did I write that down? Okay. So yeah, and so they would essentially bring that that offering. They would bring that restitution to that neutral site, and then is that where it's supposed to stay though? What happens to that restitution? Where does it go? It then has to go over, and the other side has to receive it, right? Okay, that's kind of how this process works out. But there's a problem for us when it comes to God and man, right? Blue represents the heavens. Red represents the earth. Edom, like Esau, all of that stuff, right? The colors have those kind of meanings. Um, where exactly are we going to meet at a neutral site? Getting there. There is no third party, right? There is no place of neutrality where both sides can come and meet. But there's another problem at this point. You know, can God visit the heaven? Can the heavens visit the earth? Can the earth visit the heaven? Who can ascend up into heaven? Right. So he can come to us. We cannot go to him, and so he makes a temple, essentially a tabernacle in our territory on earth. You want to call it our territory. But in reality, that's still his territory. The Holy of Holies is basically that's his throne. That's his sovereignty. It's an embassy on earth for his presence. Right, and this is the kind of stuff I've been just chewing on, and it's been messing up everything I've been working on. But it does connect in here. Trust me on that sense, at least partially. Um, and that's kind of where we're at when we look at the book of Hebrews. He talks about in chapter 9. He says the first one had regulations for worship and the earthly sanctuary. For a tent was prepared, In the outer part were the menorah, the table, and the presentation of the bread. This is called the holy place. Beyond the second curtain was a dwelling called the Holy of Holies. If you want to think of these things in some respects like you would if you were going to go into an embassy, you have to pass through the metal detectors, right? You have to pass the guards. You have to go through all of their measures in order to enter into the place to go and talk to and speak to the ambassador. Beyond the second curtain was a dwelling called the Holy of Holies. It held the golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant completely covered with gold. In the ark was a golden jar holding the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. Above it the cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. But it's not now possible to speak in detail about these things. Now with these things prepared this way, the Kohanim, the priests, do continually enter into the outer tent while completing the services, but into the inner once a year, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest alone, and not without blood, which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. So in this sense, which side has broken the covenant? The red side, right? Or this side? The red side. I'm backwards on that. The red side has, right? The earth side has. But there's a problem that we just read about from 1 Peter. Right? What did he say about that? You cannot purchase it with things such as silver or gold. There's nothing that's here that is valuable enough to pay off the debt. Does that kind of leave us with a problem? Yeah, it leaves us with a huge problem. If I collected all the wealth of the earth and I cannot pay off even my own, much less everybody else's, then where in the world am I going to get the payment or the restitution for the debt, or the restitution that I'm expected to give? Where can I find that? Where can I get that? Where is it going to come from? Because again, the offending side has to bring something, and it's something costly. It's even something that that David talked about when he was wanting to purchase the threshing floor of Araunah. Do y'all remember that? He said the Araunah was like, here, I'll just give it to you. You can have it. Because David had broken faith, broken covenant with God, right, about the census of his fighting men. And he said, there's going to be some consequence to that. And you can fall into the hands of men. You can fall into the hands of God, right, were some of the options. And he said, let me fall into the hands of God. And so what started happening? There was essentially a plague of sorts, right, within the city. And he went to where the angel was present. And he says, here, I'll give you this threshing floor so you can do what you need to do to be right with God. And what does he say? How does David put it? I will not accept this gift. I will not make a sacrifice, an offering, or whatever that does what? That costs me nothing. Right? It has to cost something when you're bringing this offering. It has to be something that is valuable. He had offended God. And so we have this trouble. There's no neutral territory. There's nothing, there's no offering or sacrifice that's enough to fully pay the penalty that we have for this breach. And yet we still need to be reconciled. And that goes back to something in Hebrews chapter 2. This is chapter 2, the ending of verse 8. He, for when he put all things in subjection to him, he left nothing outside his control. But for now we do not yet see all things subjected to him. But we see one who was made for a little while lower than the angels, namely Yeshua. He is now crowned with glory and honor because of the death he suffered, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. For it was fitting for God, for whom and through whom all things exist, in leading many sons to glory, to perfect through suffering the initiator of their salvation. For both he who sanctifies and those being sanctified are all from one. So he is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters, saying, I will proclaim your name to my brothers and sisters in the midst of the congregation. I will sing praise to you. And again I will put my trust in him. And again, here I am and the children God has given me. Therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared the same humanity, so that through death he might break the power of the one who had the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who by fear of death were in bondage all their lives. For surely he's not concerned about the angels, but about the seed of Abraham. Therefore he had to be made like his brothers in all things, so that he might become a merciful and faithful Kohen Gadol in matters relating to God, to make atonement for the sins of the people, because he himself suffered when put to the test. He is able to help those being tested. It's like a conversation that he had with Nicodemus in chapter 3 of John. Let's see, where is it? It says in verse 13, no one has gone up into heaven except the one who came down from heaven, the Son of Man. And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. So the remedy in that is that we needed an offering, but where did that offering come from? It came from heaven and descended into the form of a man, made like his brothers in every way. But here's the other, and this is the other tricky part with all of this. Even though the payment or the restitution still had to come from here, didn't it? The restitution still has to come from here, from this place. Because there's, even with all of the other offerings and all of the other sacrifices and things, we're taking it to, the temple, we're taking it to the embassy. But we have no ability to take it beyond that, do we? We can't take it any further than that. That's as far as it goes. And you see some of that language again back in Hebrews. Again, I appreciate y'all's patience with this, because again, I've been trying to put this together. When he talks about the priesthood, he says in chapter 7, verse 11, now if perfection was through the Levitical priesthood, for based on it the people had been given the Torah, what further need was there for a different Cohen to arise, designated according to the order of Melchizedek, and not according to that of Aaron? For whenever the priesthood is altered out of necessity, an alteration of law also takes place. For the one about whom these things are being said to another tribe For the one about whom these things are said belongs to another tribe, from which no one has officiated at the altar. For it is clear that our Lord is sprung forth from Judah, and concerning this tribe Moses said nothing about the Kohanim, about priesthood. It's even more evident if another Cohen arises like Melchizedek, yet one made not by virtue of a Torah requirement of physical descent, but by virtue of the power of an indestructible life. For it's testified, you are a Cohen forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. For on the one hand, a former requirement is set aside because of its weakness and ineffectiveness. It can't take it where it needs to go. It cannot take the offering beyond the embassy that's here. For Torah made nothing perfect. But on the other hand, a better hope is introduced through which we draw near to God. Moreover, it's not without a sworn oath. You read about that one? About him being a priest forever. This is verse 23. He says, now on the one hand, many have become Kohanim, who through death are prevented from continuing in office. See, the fact that they are dying and don't live forever proves that they're not qualified to move from here to here. That makes sense? Y'all following, tracking with my weirdness a little bit? Because they die, they can't go any farther than here on their own power or on their own ability or their own identity. So death has prevented them from continuing in office, verse 24. But on the other hand, the one who does remain forever has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who draw near to God through him, always living to make intercession for them. Right? Here, there's death. Death does not exist here. Right? So the one who continues to live forever, what can he do that no other priest could? He could take this offering and take it here. He can take this offering and he can take it there, which no other one could do. For such a Kohen Gadol, verse 26, was fitting for us, holy, guiltless, undefiled, separated from sinners and exalted above the heavens. He has no need to offer up sacrifices day by day like those other Kohanim Gadolim, first for their own sins and then for the sins of the people. For when he offered up himself, he did this once for all. For the Torah appoints as Kohanim men who have weakness, but the word of the oath, which came after the Torah, appoints the Son made perfect forever. Now here is the main point being said. We do have such a Kohen Gadol who has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of the majesty of the heaven in the heavens. He is a priestly attendant of the holies and the true tent which Adonai set up, and not man. So this one is just the copy, right? The tabernacle and everything is built off the pattern that was shown to Moses on the mountain, right? So that means there is a real thing here. And so just like with this kind of moment, with the covenants, with the treaties and things, the offering has to be made here, but it has to be taken there. And so the offering, the sacrifice happened here outside the camp, as Hebrews talks about. But where was the blood sprinkled? Was it sprinkled on the altar here, at the temple here? No. He took it because of his indestructible life, because he could move from here to here. He took it and he took it to the real tabernacle, the real temple, and sprinkled it on the altar in the heavens, and so that its effect was received and restored and changed everything that happens here. That makes sense? This is the kind of, and Hebrews kind of reads a lot like that. He is a priestly temple attendant of the holies and the true tent which Adonai set up, and not man. For every Kohen Gadol is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices, and so it's necessary for this one also to have something to offer. Now, if he were on earth, he would not be a Cohen at all, since there are those who offer the gifts according to the Torah. So the priesthood on earth, or Yeshua's priesthood, does not negate the Levitical priesthood. They don't contradict each other. They don't counteract each other. They work in tandem. One is designed for here, and one is designed to take the offering there. He says now, so if he was on earth, he would not be a Cohen at all, since there are those who offer the gifts according to the Torah. They offer service in a replica and a foreshadower of the heavenlies, one that is just as Moses was instructed by God when he was about to complete the tabernacle, for he says, "See that you make everything according to the design that was shown to you on the mountain." But now Yeshua has obtained a more excellent ministry, insofar as he is the mediator of a better covenant, which has been enacted on better promises, right? And he goes into a lot of the new covenant language from 31. Let's see. Going over into chapter 9, verse 6. With these things prepared this way, the Kohanim do continually enter into the outer tent while completing the services, but into the inner once a year, the Kohen Gadol alone, and not without blood, which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. By this, the Ruach HaKodesh makes clear that the way into the holies, the way into God's presence, the way into the heavens, has not yet been revealed while the first tent is still standing. It's a symbol for the present time. Accordingly, gifts and sacrifices are being offered that cannot make the worshiper perfect with respect to conscience. These relate only to food and drink and various washings, regulations for the body imposed until the time of setting things straight or restoration. But when Messiah appeared as Kohen Gadol of the good things that have now come, passing through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this creation. Right? There was nothing here that could pay for what's over there. And he was making his offering. He was going there and passing through that greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, not of this creation. He entered into the holies once and for all. That one over there, over here, the blue one. He entered into that one. Once and for all, not by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling those who have been defiled, if that sanctifies the cleansing of the flesh, if that process is significant and that process is important, he's not downplaying the significance of the process that happens at the temple on earth. He's not dismissing that at all. But if those things cleanse the flesh of that, how much more will the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, will that cleanse our conscience from the dead works to serve the living God? And what's another word for serve? When the scriptures talk about serve, what's another word for that? Worship. To worship the living God. For this reason, he is the mediator of a new covenant, in order that those called may receive the promised eternal inheritance. And since a death has taken place that redeems them from the violations under the first covenant, for where there is a covenant, the death of the one who made it must be established. For a covenant is secured upon the basis of the dead bodies. That's that whole process of where in the past, when the covenants, when God would have to come and visit Abraham, right, in order to make a covenant with him. They would split those sacrifices in half, and the fire would pass in between them. Right? Now, the covenant was established at Mount Sinai, not because we went up to heaven and secured it, but that he came down. Everything is about him moving in our direction. But with Yeshua, since he became like us, he was not ashamed to call us his brothers. He's able to take what we have, our brokenness, the death that we received, and take it there. He says, even here, verse 19, 18, that is why not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. For when every commandment has been spoken by Moses to all the people according to the Torah, he took the blood of the calves and the goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and he sprinkled both the book itself and all the people. He said, "This is the blood of the covenant which God commanded you." And in the same way he sprinkled the tabernacle and the vessels of the ministry with the blood. And nearly everything is purified in blood according to the Torah, and apart from the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness. Therefore, it was necessary for the replicas of the heavenly things to be purified with these sacrifices. But this is verse 23. The heavenly things themselves also required it. The heavenly things required it, but with better sacrifices than these. The ones here on earth cannot be sprinkled upon the one in heaven. For Messiah did not enter into holies made with hands, counterparts of the true things, but into heaven itself, now to appear in God's presence on our behalf. And he did not offer himself again and again, as the Kohen Gadol enters into the holies of holies year after year with blood that is not his own. For then he would have needed to suffer again and again from the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has been revealed once and for all at the close of the ages, to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And just as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this judgment, so also Messiah was offered once to bear the sins of many, and he will appear the second time apart from sin to those eagerly awaiting him for salvation. That goes along with what we were reading about in Isaiah 53. Being pierced because of our transgressions, crushed because of our iniquities. It's by his stripes that we are healed. We've all like sheep gone astray. We've turned our own way. He has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He makes the many righteous. That's verse 11. The righteous one, my servant, will make many righteous, and he will bear their iniquities. And the last line, for he bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors. We had to have this process play out. We had to have one who came from the heavens to the earth to secure the proper payment that can be taken back.